October 2022. A team west of Luxor is searching for a ritual offering pit. Standard fieldwork, nothing more. They find a sacrificed calf. Protocol says a second pit should be nearby, so they keep digging. Instead of a matching pit, they hit a staircase descending into darkness, its ceiling painted royal blue with golden stars. No pharaoh's tomb had been positively identified since Tutankhamun in 1922, and this one belonged to a king whose burial chamber was almost completely empty. The question isn't just who was buried here, it's who came back to take everything out. The October sun had barely warmed the limestone cliffs of Wadi Gabana El Khroud when the field team began their season. This stretch of desert, west of Luxor, held little promise of royal secrets, just the quiet expectation of finding ritual offering pits, the sort placed at the entrances of elite tombs. Dr. Piers Litherland, heading the New Kingdom Research Foundation mission, set the pace for a methodical dig. The work was steady, guided by the careful logic of Egyptian mortuary tradition. Where there is one offering pit, there should be a second. The first sign of anything unusual came with the discovery of a sacrificed calf. Its bones, still arranged as they would have been thousands of years ago, pointed to a foundation deposit. In New Kingdom Egypt, such animal offerings marked the sanctification of a tomb, a final gesture to secure the favour of the gods. For Litherland and his team, the find was textbook, ritual, not royal. Standard protocol called for a search for the matching pit, likely on the opposite side of the axis. The team pressed forward, trowels tracing the margins of the deposit, eyes alert for the subtle shifts in soil that might reveal another cache. Each layer of sand and gravel was peeled back with the expectation of routine. Yet, as the trench deepened, the ground's texture began to change. A patch of softer earth caught the attention of two Egyptian field technicians, a signal that something beneath the surface was not following the script. What began as a search for a simple offering pit was quietly becoming something else, a site that would soon demand a different kind of attention. A dull thud broke the rhythm of trowels against limestone. The ground, so reliably firm moments before, gave way to a patch that crumbled under the slightest pressure. Ashraf Omar Ali and Haraji Syed Ahmed, the two technicians tracing the line of the trench, paused. The earth here was different, looser, almost as if something had been hidden beneath it for centuries. The team widened the trench, their tools moving with a new sense of caution. What they expected was another pit, maybe a mirror to the one already found. Instead, the outline of cut stone began to appear, then a hard edge, then the first step of a staircase, carved deep into the bedrock. Dust fell away, revealing a shaft just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The staircase dropped steeply, the air below cool and unmoving. The opening was barely a metre across, but it beckoned. Ropes were tied off, and the first team member slid down into the darkness, boots scraping against stone. Light flickered over the walls, catching a flash of colour overhead. There, where the ceiling arched low, a field of blue paint shimmered in the glow, scattered with yellow, five-pointed stars. This was no ordinary tomb. In Egypt, only kings were given ceilings like the night sky. No one spoke for a moment. The realization settled in. The search for a simple ritual feature had uncovered the unmistakable signature of royalty. The silence was broken only by the sound of breath, echoing off stone that had not seen light in thousands of years. The dig had crossed an invisible line. What lay ahead was no longer routine, but a mystery that would demand years of patience to unravel. Progress inside the tomb ground to a near halt as the team confronted the reality of what lay ahead. The staircase and corridors were packed with a dense, flood-hardened debris unlike anything the crew had anticipated. This was not ordinary sand or loose rubble, but a tightly compacted matrix of silt and limestone flakes, cemented by centuries of water and pressure until it behaved like poured concrete. Every attempt to force a way through risked shattering the fragile plaster on the walls and ceiling. or triggering a collapse that could erase what little remained of the tomb's original features. Standard shovels and picks proved useless against the hard pan. Instead, the team switched to water jetting rigs, using carefully controlled streams to soften the cemented fill without damaging the underlying stone. Progress was measured in centimetres, not metres. Each day's work brought new engineering puzzles. How to shore up unstable sections with timber and steel, how to ventilate the narrow corridors, how to keep dust and humidity from eating away at the ancient paint. After a minor collapse in early 2023, when a slab of limestone shifted and forced an emergency evacuation, the team installed laser distance meters to monitor for the slightest movement. Any reading above 2 millimeters meant an immediate halt to digging. The excavation stretched across nearly 3 years. Rotating crews worked in shifts, sometimes in stifling heat, sometimes in the chill of early morning, always with the knowledge that speed could destroy what they had come to protect. The hard pan sealed the tomb so completely that even sound was muffled, every scrape and tap absorbed by the dense, glassy sediment. The work became a test of patience and nerve, a slow-motion battle between modern engineering and the aftermath of an ancient disaster. Each layer removed was a victory measured not in treasure, but in preservation. A chance to see, for the first time in over 3,000 years, the architecture and artistry that had survived both flood and time. A faint trace of white plaster, almost lost in the gloom, caught the attention of a conservator working along the north wall. Within the damage and collapse, a single painted fragment survived, an arc of hieroglyphs from the Amduat, the ancient funerary text reserved for Egypt's most powerful kings. The script, delicate and faded, was unmistakable. Its presence transformed the excavation. Until this moment, the team had relied on architecture and decoration to suggest royal status. Now the chamber itself offered a written clue, a direct link to the ritual and theology of the royal afterlife. The Amduat was not a text for courtiers or officials, it belonged only to a pharaoh, guiding his soul through the 12 hours of night. The chamber's battered surfaces told their own story, beneath layers of flood-washed silt and broken ceiling. Patterns of blue and gold still clung to the stone. Faint stars painted in yellow drifted across the surviving patches of ceiling, a celestial map meant to carry the king across eternity. On the walls, the ghost of a once grand decorative scheme lingered. Fragments of border bands, hints of divine figures, and the remains of protective spells. Each detail confirmed that this was not the tomb of a noble or a priest, but the resting place of a royal ruler. With the discovery of the Amduat fragment, the question facing the team shifted. No longer was it a matter of whether the tomb was royal. The evidence on the walls began to narrow the possibilities. The chamber was starting to reveal its identity, not just as a royal tomb, but as one that might soon name its king. The turning point came not with painted ceilings or broken plaster, but with a handful of alabaster jar fragments lying half buried in the silt along the chamber's western wall. Their surfaces, creamy and translucent, had weathered centuries of darkness and flood. Yet the hieroglyphs carved into them remained sharp. Under the dust, the inscription revealed itself: Osiris Archaeology, Thutmose II's throne name, followed by a second line naming his great royal wife, Hatshepsut. The script was unmistakable. Egyptologists from the Ministry of Antiquities and the New Kingdom Research Foundation worked side by side, confirming the titulary against royal lists and databases. The evidence was direct, not circumstantial. No other king bore this combination of names in this context, and the reference to Hatshepsut fixed the date to the early 18th dynasty. Speculation about the tomb's owner ended in that moment. Early theories had ranged from Thutmose II to Amenhotep I, both plausible given the tomb's architecture. But the absence of their names and the explicit mention of Hatshepsut ruled out every alternative. The fragments had survived the flood that had scoured away so much else, offering proof that could not be argued away or revised. The chamber, battered as it was, now had a voice. For the first time in over a century, a royal tomb in the Theban necropolis could be identified by name, not by guesswork or architectural style. The announcement, made public in February 2025, sent ripples through the world of Egyptology. Since Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun in 1922, no other pharaoh's tomb had been found, named, and confirmed in this landscape. The alabaster jar fragments transformed a difficult excavation into a historic breakthrough, restoring Thutmose II's place in the royal lineage and rewriting the record of New Kingdom burial sites. In the end, it was not gold or treasure, but a few lines of incised text on stone that delivered the answer scholars had chased for generations. Thutmose II sits at a crossroads in Egypt's royal story, a king whose brief reign, around 1493 to 1479 BC, shapes the early 18th dynasty's timeline. His rule, wedged between the long shadow of Thutmose I and the extraordinary reign of Hatshepsut, is often described as short and enigmatic. Yet it is precisely this brevity that makes his burial so valuable to historians. Every royal tomb from this period is a rare anchor for the chronology of New Kingdom Egypt, and Thutmose II's is the last of the early 18th dynasty pharaohs to be found and named. His marriage to Hatshepsut, who was both his half-sister and great royal wife, adds a layer of political complexity. Hatshepsut would later seize the throne herself, ruling as pharaoh and reshaping Egypt's religious and artistic landscape. The explicit mention of her name alongside Thutmose II's in the tomb ties the discovery to one of the dynasty's most dramatic power shifts. It also gives weight to theories that she oversaw his burial, and perhaps even orchestrated later efforts to protect his remains after disaster struck the tomb. The architecture and surviving decoration offer a window into early New Kingdom mortuary practice. The bent axis plan, the blue ceiling with yellow stars, and the traces of funerary texts are features that would become standard in later royal tombs. Here, they appear in an early, almost experimental form. This tomb is not just a resting place for one king, it is a link to a royal era when Egypt's traditions were being written in stone, and when the fate of a single burial could echo through centuries of dynastic history. The emptiness of Thutmose II's tomb stands as its own kind of evidence. The chamber, once designed to cradle the king's body and treasures for eternity, was devastated not by robbers, but by water. Geological surveys and sediment cores reveal that soon after the burial, a violent flash flood tore through the wadi above, breaching the entrance and forcing tons of silt and limestone into the corridors. The floodwater collapsed parts of the ceiling, shattered painted plaster, and left behind a hard pan of compacted debris. Over centuries, this sediment hardened into a concrete-like slab, sealing the tomb so tightly that it preserved what little decoration remained, but also made the original burial almost unrecognisable. Optically stimulated luminescence dating of the flood layer points to around 1475 BC, just a few years after Thutmose II's death. This disaster didn't simply erase the tomb's contents, it set off a chain of human decisions. Ancient officials, confronted with a flooded and collapsing royal burial, could not leave the king's remains to rot beneath the mud. Administrative papyri from later dynasties describe state-organised rescue efforts in times of crisis. In this case, the evidence suggests that priests or royal agents entered the tomb, recovered the body and whatever burial goods they could salvage, and relocated them to a safer place. The royal cache at Deir el-Bahari, known as TT320, becomes the most likely destination. Discovered in 1881, this hidden chamber contained dozens of pharaohs and their burial equipment, all moved there to protect them from both natural disaster and human threat. The mummy traditionally identified as Thutmose II was found among them. though modern analysis suggests the identification is still debated. What is clear is that the devastation wrought by the flood turned the tomb into a sealed time capsule, its emptiness a record of rescue rather than loss. The absence of treasures is not a dead end, but a clue to a dramatic episode of ancient crisis management. Roughly 5 centuries after Thutmose II's burial, new hands cut a corridor into the tomb's heart. For years this passage was blamed on robbers. The logic seemed simple. An upward sloping tunnel, hacked through ancient stone, must have been made by thieves searching for gold. Tool marks and the sharp angle of the cut matched the signatures of illicit digging seen elsewhere in the Theban hills. Yet the details never fully fit the pattern of a hasty break-in. Recent fieldwork and careful study of the corridor's construction have upended the old story. The passage rises away from the main burial axis, its walls finished in white gypsum plaster, a level of care rarely seen in criminal work. Small ritual jars, left deliberately along the route, suggest not theft, but devotion. The direction of the digging, too, tells its own story. Rather than driving directly toward the king's resting place, the corridor seems designed for extraction, not intrusion. Textual parallels from the late 18th dynasty describe moments of crisis, when royal bodies had to be rescued after disaster. In those accounts, priests and officials acted with urgency and reverence, moving pharaohs to safety when tombs were threatened by flood or collapse. The evidence here points to a similar mission. The upward slope and careful plastering hint at a planned effort to recover the king's remains and whatever burial goods could still be saved, perhaps after the flood had rendered the original chamber unusable. This reframing turns the corridor from a scar of violation into a trace of loyalty, a physical record of people trying to save what was left of a royal burial. But the final fate of Thutmose II's treasures remains unsettled. The corridor leads only so far. Beyond it, the trail grows cold, leaving the question of where those objects ended up unresolved. The tomb's emptiness becomes less an accusation than an open mystery, one that still waits for its answer. Today, the tomb's silence leaves more questions than answers. As each layer of sand yields new surprises, Egypt's ancient past proves it still holds secrets capable of rewriting history. The search for Thutmose II's missing treasures continues, and every discovery reminds us that history is not just found, but made. What will the next breakthrough reveal? Share your thoughts below.